Hi, everybody. How we doing?
Doing great, Chris.
Excellent. Ben, good to see you.
Good to see you.
Going to have a little update from you in a minute, so I'm not gonna bring you much right now. I see Dr. Bonnie Knudsen on there. Doctor, how are you?
I am absolutely phenomenal with 5 of our teams winning last week and a new AD. We are going strong.
Unbelievable. Why am I not surprised by any of that?
Me either. Spartans win.
Congratulations. That's good news. Bonnie Knudsen used to write for me years ago when I owned a business magazine. And every time she wrote some advice column, it was the most requested piece to that date we'd ever had. So I always keep her very close.
Thank you, Chris. I appreciate it.
Well, it's the truth. Carlotta, I see you on, but we're going to hear from you in a minute, so I'm not going to give you too much. Tara Draper, what's going on? I see you have the great green north behind you.
Yes, busy with the events coming back to us and busy with our golfers.
And of course, Tara's up at Treetops in Gaylord, right?
Yes.
So that's pretty cool stuff. Always nice to be up there. We'll be working with that on a little bit. Annika Singh, how are you?
Doing good, thanks.
Very good.
I'm joining this right after the coffee chat last week, and I've been trying to know more. I'm a prospective applicant.
Well, it's good to have you on, partner. And I see Nicole Noel Williams. Who's bringing planes in if you're here? What the heck?
We got a team, people. It's bringing everybody together to do their part.
Oh, it's not just, okay, well, that's good news. That makes me feel safer when I'm out there. Good to see you. We're going to get a little update from you in a minute. And I see Rebecca Allen there. Rebecca, how you doing? Good to see you. And we're going to hear from you also. David Smith, what's happening in the world of cryptocurrency? Anything?
Oh my gosh, everything, all the time. It's now an official currency of a country as of yesterday.
What? Can you name the country and will we recognize it?
El Salvador.
El
But
Salvador.
I think it's the first domino. The country also spent, I think about 25 million yesterday buying Bitcoins. They hold it in their treasury. First country to hold it in their treasury. I think first of many. We'll see.
Okay, so if they're holding it in their industry, in their treasury, does that mean that it's kind of like their gold?
Yep.
Wow, that's a lot of confidence. God, good for them. That's pretty interesting. Do you see it falling geographically? I mean, you said other countries to follow.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I think people are excited about it in South America, Latin America. I'm not too up on that, but there's a voting on a site called coinmarketcap.com where just people can go and vote. And I can't remember if Paraguay's got the most votes, but I don't think it's very accurate. I think Africa would be a place to look. There's like 8 countries that have the US dollar as their national currency, which El Salvador also did. So maybe Panama, if they're already using the US dollar and don't have their own national currency, maybe they'll add in Bitcoin. And it probably depends too a lot on, does this move turn out well like it did for MicroStrategies last year and it's off like a rocket, or does it crater and everybody's like, oh, that was a really bad idea?
Let's not talk about bad ideas today. Save it for another. All right, Lisa, I see you on, also Rania. Rhonda, how are you doing? How are things out at the international focal point of the world?
Very well. How are you?
Excellent. Probably way better than I should be.
Good to hear, Chris.
Marshall Bryce, what are you up to?
Nothing much, just working hard.
That's what we need more of, you know what I mean? Yeah.
Absolutely.
That's what my staff always comes to me about, Chris, could you work a little harder? All right. Let's see who else we've got on here. Steve Brennan, what's going on in your world?
Hey, Chris, good Good to see you. We're just interested to hear what some of these new mobility things are, the activities going on, and yeah, over here at the Board of Water and Light, and developing our programs to kind of assist the commercial development.
Yeah, I would imagine you guys are going to be affected by this a little bit, especially you guys are already ahead of the curve a little bit on some of your delivery vehicles and work vehicles, et cetera, out there. So that's always good. And it's good. I've heard these panelists all individually many times, but I've never heard them say the same thing twice. So this is going to be, as I hear it and they answer the questions, it's going to be new for me as it is to all the rest of you as well. So that's, you're right. Bill Motz, jump on. Tell me about what's going on in your life as if I don't know. Bill, you didn't put us on snooze, did you?
Okay, hear me now?
There you go. That's it.
What don't you know about me? Then maybe I can share that with you.
Well, you can go ahead and make some kind of announcement or something about your future.
Well, my future's already come. I retired on the end of August, so I'm here watching things from the outside instead of being on the inside at LCC.
But you're still involved. You're still here. You're still involved, and I love.
I may serve on a couple of committees for the foundation at this point.
Well, that's a good example for your kids. We never quit being involved, and as long as you can contribute, we all should. You know.
I agree. Thank you.
All right, so I'm looking over at Jeff Mosher, who's about to open this meeting to everyone, and we'll go to the formal piece of it. And so welcome, everybody. It's good to have you all here. Thank you all for actually showing up. It's kind of interesting, and I'll explain a little bit about what's going on, but thank you all for being here again. And we value your attendance, and of course, you're welcome to share this video and other information MBN publishes after today's event to get this out to those who know that who are interested in Michigan's mobility sector, because there's going to be a lot of really important information here. The MBN speaker series, the one you're on, has been going since 2004, when our very first speaker was Joe Dumars, who at the time was the general manager of the Detroit Pistons. And when COVID hit, we transitioned to virtual web events. Within COVID parameters, we look forward to return of live events, which could be as early as next time. So stay tuned for those announcements. Looking back, it's already been 3 years since Wei Peng joined us to share his presentation from M-City as their director, discussing mobility at that time in 2018. So we're excited to see what today's panelists have to share with us, and what's new and much more up to date. As a matter of housekeeping, if you lose your connection to the webinar today, then you can rejoin using that same unique link in the email that you used to join initially. If you come in through Zoom, little reminder that the meeting ID is 876-9452-5744 with a passcode of 357213. Also, remember to please submit any questions that you have through the chat function here on Zoom, and we will actually get to them one way or another. At this point, I say this every time we meet, but it can't be overstated how important to these events the sponsors are. And so we want to start this by thanking the Capital Region International Airport, Fly Lansing, Dean Transportation, certainly Shaheen Chevrolet Cadillac, Sinair Corporation, LAFQ, the MSU International Business Center, Tristar Trust Bank, and LEAP, the Lansing Economic Area Partnership. And we'll be hearing from a few of those in just a few minutes. And with that in mind, we're now going to go around our virtual room for our popular community roundtable to get 1 or 2 minute updates from certain people. And let me put on the still new director of the Capital Region International Airport, Nicole Noel Williams. Nicole, I hear the planes going overhead. What's happening out at your venue?
we're keeping people traveling, that's for sure. So we're slowly seeing an ongoing increase of passengers getting back, both business and leisure travelers. We do anticipate with the COVID variant, depending on how things progress, Delta shared with me yesterday that they started to see a little bit of decline, about a 3 to 5% reduction in bookings. To me, I connect that to all the families sending their kids back to school and kind of getting repositioned as we start moving forward with this fall and winter season. So we look forward to seeing folks traveling back in and out of the airport. I can share I've had 4 business trips since I've been back with the airport now 4 months. And they have been clockwork, in and out of the airport, easy connections, competitive fares. A couple of the flights were actually less expensive than all of our neighboring airports. So excited about that. A couple things I do want to share is we have opened up a 24/7 marketplace upstairs. So after you go through security, to your left, you'll see that there's now vending services, coffee, waters, quick grab foods that are there and available. We look forward to getting the bar and restaurant back open and operating after we lost our vendor due to the pandemic and the impact that had on them. So we're working on getting that back up and operating. Hopefully by this fall, we'll see, or later this fall, we'll see those services come back into play. TSA PreCheck, if you don't have TSA PreCheck or you need to renew your TSA PreCheck, you can go online November 1st. That week of November 1st, we're going to host an event here at the airport for folks to get reinstated or signed into TSA PreCheck, which just really for folks that aren't familiar with TSA PreCheck, it is an easy process that allows you to go through security much faster, easier, quicker. Not that you have to experience too much of delay here in Lansing, but it's when you're returning back maybe from some other major markets that you'd want to benefit from the TSA PreCheck. TSA also extended the mask wearing in the airport as well as on the airplanes until January 18th. So those are some of the key things I wanted to share this morning, Chris. Thank you.
You know, it's interesting. I spent the last week hiking in the White Mountains. And so we flew into Logan and went with my grandkids and their parents up to the White Mountains, but we flew out of Lansing as we always do. And there was not an easier transition, certainly not Logan, than there was, going out of Lansing. So nice job.
Yeah, you probably saw all those Amazon trucks that are being staged at the airport parking lot. So we're also excited about the announcement of Amazon expansion here in the region that came out this morning. So I'm working everything I can to make sure if there's planes coming and going pertaining to Amazon, they're coming in and out of Lansing. So hopefully in the months ahead, we have more details on that.
Pretty great stuff, what's going on. I mean, it really is. You're doing a great job out there.
Thanks, Chris.
So, and the other thing too, I guess I'd like to reiterate is how much of that movement out there is cargo, and that's a big future for this airport as well. I don't see Mark on here from Sinair, Dean Transportation, obviously, the startup school. It's hard to get anybody off, any of the deans off their bus route to get here, but they're out working hard. Rebecca Allen, I did see you from LAFQ, Commercial Loan Officer. Rebecca, give us a little update. Like I like to say, show me the money.
Thanks, Chris. Hope everyone's doing great. Like Chris said, Rebecca Allen, Commercial Loan Officer at LAFQ Credit Union, your credit union for life. Here we have 10 branches here in the whole Lansing area. And right now we definitely have money to lend on any kind of commercial real estate. So, sorry, I've had too much water today. So, but we would love to help more local members here. And we have a lot of more people that I'm running into that are researching commercial real estate, using that to create passive income and generational wealth. So they're kind of using that to support themselves, get, start using that passive income to hopefully pass on to their children one day using commercial properties that have triple net leases. So that's something I'm seeing a lot of, and I'm helping a lot of people hopefully realize their potential with that and helping them with their financial needs. So if you know someone or you are looking for something like that, reach out and refer me. We can definitely help them.
There you go. I think I have a referral in the back of my head for you right now.
Perfect.
Well, you did a great job for me on a couple of properties, and I appreciate that.
Thanks a lot, Chris.
All right. So Carlotta Jamaki, Assistant Director for International Trade Program, replacing Jade Sims with the MSU Cyber International Business Center. Carlotta, we introduced you in July, and it's good to have you back. What's going on out there?
Thanks so much, Chris. Really appreciate it. So the first announcement I want to make is that we moved offices. So you may have visited us in the past. You used to be in the basement. We actually moved up 4 floors. So we're still in Epley Center in the Broad College of Business, just on the 4th floor. So next time you're in East Lansing, please feel free to stop by. Second announcement that I have is we have a Global Business Club event taking place September 23rd on demystifying China. That's with Ambassador Craig Allen. And last but not least, we started a new webinar series called our Research Spotlight, which is really an event like webinar series geared towards academics. We hosted one yesterday on cultural differences, and we'll be hosting one October 14th on globalization, Islam, and marketing. And that's all I have.
Well, that's all you have, just controlling the world. That's all you have for us today. Okay.
Absolutely.
All right.
Thanks.
Thanks, Carla. I appreciate it. And congratulations on getting out of the basement. That was really.
Thank you. Thank
Yeah.
you. We have great new offices. So really, anybody's welcome to stop by.
I'm gonna get out even if I don't have a reason. I want to see where you're at.
Fantastic.
All right, Ben Bakken, I did see you on, Senior Vice President, Lansing Market Director for Tristar Trust Bank. What's going on with you guys?
Hey, Chris, how you doing today? Actually, before I talk about Tristar, I want to give a shout out to Nicole Noel Williams this morning. I was at a really great event. It was a panel discussion at the MSU property, welcoming 6 different female executives that have taken over recently. So between Nicole, I think we all know Cindy Kangas at Capital Area Michigan Works, Michelle Lance at the Food Bank, Julie Pinkston at the CVB. So anyway, really great event. Nicole, not surprisingly, you did a great job. Keep up the good work at the airport. So.
No, Glenn, I'm glad, Ben, that you brought that up because unfortunately I had a meeting for Lansing Promise and couldn't make that. But I'll tell you what, the leadership that's coming through right now is just putting us back on top. It's just great stuff.
It's outstanding. Yeah, it was a really great event. So, but yeah, thanks, Chris, and excited, to hear this panel discussion. I was really fired up when I saw this group that you put together to have this discussion. Here in Lansing, automotive has always been part of what we do in our economy, but that phrase of automotive, has really transitioned into mobility and this concept of how do you get from here to there in a lot of different ways. And of course, what Nicole is doing, that's all part of that. Things are doing great at Tristar, and we think many times in terms of how we help an individual or an organization get from here to there, whether that be toward retirement, if that's their goal, or, as far as just how we help them manage their investments. I was talking to our chief investment officer today, who heads that group of investment professionals that we have of CFAs and, in their interaction with economists and so forth. There's a lot of unknowns, as we know, in the economy right now, and there's mixed signals with regard to, some of the economic data that's coming out as it relates to inflation and what the Fed's response will be, whether that's rates or tapering and the Delta variant and some of the recent jobs data. But the point is with Tristar and what we do for our clients is we have that investment team of professionals that are looking at that every day and looking at making adjustments as they need to on the investment side, but then also certainly what we do with financial planning, again, helping people get from here to there and accomplish their goals, and everybody's situation is different. So things at Tristar have been great. We've been successful in adding some great new client relationships, but just as importantly, I should say, is some of the talent that we brought on. Lee Ryman joined us a couple months ago. She's an attorney and a CPA with Willingham & Cote. She's a trust officer for us. Hired Kelly Moffitt. He managed a large growth fund with the state of Michigan retirement system. He joins us as in our investment team, and then Bill Christensen joined us late last year. He's almost a 30-year trust officer. So if you want to learn more about Tristar and the success we've had, we'd be happy to have a conversation. But again, congrats, Nicole, and looking forward to today. Thanks very much, Chris.
All right, good to have you with us, and thanks for your support. So I understand Bob Trezise has been called away, or he'd be sharing some enthusiastic economic development news with us today. But Bob's the guy who owns the bus. Here's one of the guys who drives the bus quite a bit, and that's Carl Dorscheimer, Senior Vice President of Economic Development at LEAP. And Carl, you've been so busy. I don't think I've seen you since we were in China together. That's how it seems.
Yeah, that's right, Chris. Been very busy. A lot of things going on. The early part of the year and still continuing, we at LEAP are helping a lot of small businesses by distributing funds that first came through not only the EDC, the Economic Development Corporation, the city of Lansing, but also through the county and through the state and through the federal sources too, in terms of our small business assistance. Most recent program, which was, we just recently awarded several $1 million to small businesses. It's the Ingham County Sunrise Program, and it's limited to businesses within the county of Ingham, but that includes Lansing, East Lansing, Meridian, and Mason, and all the others. So, and that's an $11 million program to help small businesses who continue to suffer from the impacts of the pandemic. But in other ways, throughout the pandemic in the last year and a few months, our manufacturers, especially our kind of locally grown manufacturers, are looking to expand and looking to invest. And there's this backlog of products and services that as a result of the pandemic. And so we're pretty optimistic, and so are the companies. They're starting to gear up and invest. And then another thing that's happened recently is we've had ribbon cuttings and openings of where there was several large buildings in downtown Lansing. There was a former YMCA building. There's a former Oliver Towers building. There's the Lake Trust headquarters, and also the former Temple Club building. All of these are examples where a large building, whether it be office or other, is being repurposed into mostly residential mixed use, which is great because, as you know, this shift to remote working, I think the demand for certain types of office space may be pretty low or slack, and we start looking at ways to repurpose that space. And these are examples where it's being done and been done. So those are great projects, and they also help us attract and retain people to the area. One of the major issues with a lot of employers is finding people to work, and you have to offer more than just a job. You have to offer a good place to live too, and good living options, and a strong downtown, and all the other amenities that they expect to find in the city. So we're working on those too, and these are examples of that. So, I'm optimistic. I think the backlog of demand for various things is going to continue to power the economy. As long as we don't, continue to get these variants and other shocks to the economy. But I'm optimistic. Things seem to be, there's no smooth, easy road out of this. But just seeing what we see and then the willingness of businesses to make investments that are long-term investments makes me pretty optimistic that next couple of years are going to be pretty good for Lansing and the Lansing region.
Well, you're no newbie to this, so I feel very confident having it in your hands. Carl, another thing I would just jump on, and that is that in conjunction with all of this recruiting and refurbishing, reestablishing, et cetera, a very important function that you guys plan is retention, because that is every bit as important, if not more. And you guys are continually on that path as well, and we appreciate that.
Yeah, I agree. The other thing I failed to mention is the big news this morning. Obviously, Amazon's building a 1 million square feet facility in Delta Township in the Lansing area. So that's a big investment, a lot of jobs. And so, we continue, Lansing's also been in the Lansing region, centrally located in Michigan. And, it makes good sense from that standpoint, from warehousing, distribution, manufacturing.
Well, certainly does. Well, thanks, Carl, for the good job that you do. And thanks to all of you for being part of the roundtable here today. And now let's get on with the big show. To start off with, let me say that our thoughts are with one of today's intended panelists, Trevor Paul, Michigan's Chief Mobility Officer for the Michigan Office of Future Mobility and Electrification. He's been called away on a family emergency, and we're working with his team. As he is available, we're going to record a supplement to this webinar where you can watch and hear the information that he would have shared with us here today, but our thoughts are with him, certainly. But we have a tremendous panel remaining. As a matter of fact, now our pair of mobility panelists, Carla Bailo President and CEO, Center for Automotive Research in Ann Arbor, Michigan. Carla is a leader in engineering and vehicle program management with 35 years of experience in the automotive industry. Under her leadership, CAR continues to be a preeminent resource of objective and unbiased research analysis and information regarding the North American automotive industry. In addition to her role at CAR, Ms. Bailo was the 2016 through 2018 Vice President of Automotive for SAE International, which is a global association of more than 138,000 engineers and related technical experts in the aerospace, automotive, and commercial vehicle industries. 138,000 engineers. That conjures up 1,000 jokes, quite frankly. Can that many people look at their shoes, right? All right, Carla, I'm just joking. You're going to get your shot back at me. Prior to joining CAR, she was most recently the Assistant Vice President for Mobility Research and Business Development at The Ohio State University. She also has 25 years of experience at Nissan North America. And of course, joining her on today's panel is Glenn Stevens. He's the Executive Director of MICHauto and Vice President of Automotive and Mobility Initiatives. In this role, Glenn provides a strategic direction and leadership to the MICHauto program in its efforts to promote, grow, and retain Michigan's automotive and next generation mobility industries. MICHauto, if you don't know, is a statewide industry association focused on developing the state's automotive and mobility industry in the key areas of talent, education, advocacy, industry awareness, mobility, and the startup ecosystem. And we're going to hear more about all those here today. He has more than 25 years of management strategy and operation experience across the automotive, mobility, steel, specialty chemicals, and capital equipment industries. Prior to joining the chamber, Stevens served as Senior Vice President of Membership and Sales with the Original Equipment Suppliers Association. Additionally, his previous experience includes leadership positions with Blue Water Automotive Systems, Colleen Corporation, and National Steel Corp. So there is no lack of expertise on this panel today. So with that, Carla and Glenn, welcome. It's great to have you both here. And we're going to give you each a few minutes to kind of introduce your organization to this gathering for those of you who are watching this on video later as well. So Carla, why don't we start with you? Give us a little bit on CAR.
Sure, be happy to. Hello, everyone. Good afternoon. As John kindly said, I'm the president and CEO of the Center for Automotive Research. We are a 501c3 nonprofit whose mission really is to support the sustainability of the automotive industry. And we do that by leading edge research in several different areas. And it's interesting now that we have kind of the mobility ecosystem, how technology is merging with business. So yes, I'm a geek, which, you know, John alluded to earlier, and love technology, but technology is only good if it really improves people's lives and promotes equity, and it also is a good business venture, right? So all of this has to come together. And at CAR, we focus on doing that kind of research for government and industry. We also host MBS, which was just held a few weeks ago up in Traverse City, one of the largest automotive conferences that exists. Had 2 days of fabulous conversations on the hot topics in the industry. And then we also have several programs related to lightweighting, connected autonomous vehicles, propulsion technologies, and other working groups as they're deemed necessary.
All right, so there you go. Thanks so much, Carla. And you know, I threw you kind of a curve because I came in through another system to today's meeting. And of course, you know, my name is Chris, but John is actually my first name, which is how they brought it in. And I'm just going, why is she calling me John? And I looked up.
I'm so sorry.
No.
No, it's a total, I just looking at the screen and.
Of course you are. I do the same thing.
So,
you know, there's a.
Well, you can call me anything after this. It's okay, Carlo. I get called Carla all the time, Carlo, because it rhymes with Bailo. So don't worry about it. I'm good.
Okay. I think we'll stay with Carla. That works a lot. All right, Glenn Stevens. I've corrected my name now, Glenn, so you can go ahead. How are you doing today? And give us a few.
Good, Chris. Thanks. And thanks for the opportunity. I'm just going to take a sidetrack real quick because one of the people who've already spoken, I met that person, and that would be Carlotta in 2017 when she came from Washington, D.C. to join our team. So she worked on the MICHauto team, and frankly speaking, cut to the chase, she really helped us go next level. So it's good to see her on today, and we look forward to collaborating. But I know one of your sponsors and your experts very well, and I know a few of the rest of you also. Certainly, Carla and I have talked a lot, particularly in the last year and a half, and we can talk about that during the panel. But MICHauto is also a 501c3, and we are part of the Detroit Regional Chamber and the Economic Development Foundation side of the chamber. So that's where we sit. But we are also the statewide association for the auto and mobility industry. We're a little bit unique in that in our umbrella, it's pretty much anybody who's a stakeholder in the industry in Michigan is welcome to be a part of our community. And in Michigan, that's just about everybody. So under our tent, we have OEMs, suppliers, economic development, universities, community college, you name it, we've got them involved. About 110 companies and organizations are actively engaged with us. And that ranges from everything, the small companies to the large companies, to the Upper Peninsula, to the tip of the Lower Peninsula. And our focus is to promote and retain and grow the industry we have. Chris knows this, but back in 2007, Michigan didn't have an industry association that focused on our auto industry. Tennessee had one, Alabama had one, Mississippi had one, and Michigan didn't. So we started one, actually a group of us with some seed money from 4 companies and Tom Manganello from Warner Norcross. It was he was the instigator. I wrote the business plan, and we all had day jobs, but we said, if we don't focus on Michigan's signature industry, and particularly the talent pipeline, we aren't going to have a signature industry. And so that's what we've been working on for quite some time. And we don't do it by ourselves. We find where the collaborative points are. We have a really strong relationship with the Center for Automotive Research because there isn't anybody better in the world with automotive research than the one we have here in Michigan that Carla leads. And we focus on the different organizations there where we can build synergy around the state. Our 3 focus areas are the talent pipeline for the industry, policy that will drive our industry for the future, and then what Michigan needs to do in this next generation mobility evolution, which has been going on quite some time. And we can talk about that in the course of the conversation. But basically, we tied together back in 2014 with MDOT, Business Leaders for Michigan, the MEDC, and the University Research Corridor. And together with MICHauto, we formed what was called the Michigan Mobility Initiative. This was in 2014. And throughout the first couple of years, and that group no longer meets formally, but we did 2014, 15, and 16, because we said if we don't put a blueprint together and use some of the roadmaps that we already have in place, Director Steitel at MDOT, BLM had put together, as many of you know, a turnaround plan for Michigan that included a Center for Mobility as a pillar of the BLM turnaround plan. We said, we got to work this together. So we did. And the 4 areas we focused on are projects, policy, positioning, and people. Those are the 4 areas or 4 quadrants. And when you go back to 2015, we really had one signature thing in place, which really put us on the map with regards to the mobility world. And that was M-City. And that was the research center in Ann Arbor. Now, every one of those 4 quadrants has so much activity going on it that it's actually kind of mind-blowing sometimes. But that's because we've all been collectively working on this together. And so that's what we do. And our job is to make sure that we protect the jobs we have here and we evolve with them. We still build a lot of vehicles in Michigan. About 15% of North American production is still in Michigan. We want to make sure we keep doing that. But we also want to make sure we lead in electrification and connected vehicle infrastructure and the things that are going to drive the future. As one of you, I'm trying to think who was saying it earlier. mobility is different now. It's about how goods and transportation and people get from one point to another in a world that has more friction. And so that's what we're all focused on together.
Yeah, well, and that both of you, excellent job. That gives us a fair understanding of your peers of organizations and a good jumping point for what we're going to do now, which is we're going to take turns answering a couple of questions here. And Carla, we'll start with you, ladies first, right?
Okay.
All right, so we're gonna start with kind of a meaning of life question. The future of mobility, is it multimodal or is it car centric?
Oh boy, I had prepared some notes and you just asked the perfect question. So Chris, I'm going to keep saying that repeatedly. The future is ACEs, right? Autonomous, connected, electrified, and shared. And all of those elements need to come together to create the mobility ecosystem of tomorrow. When we talk about the mobility ecosystem, it's every kind of transportation, from public transit all the way down to using your feet, because we really want people to use their own propulsion as much as possible for health reasons. And, it's just a good way to get around in urban areas. But in order to have this kind of mobility ecosystem that's not car centric, you have to think about urban planning first. Right now, we design cities around roadways. We don't design cities around the way people want to live in them. So meaning places to congregate, places to exercise, places to go out to eat. I mean, the reason why cities started was because people wanted to get together and talk about the hot topics of the day. So we really need to think about turning urban planning upside down, and that's going to take time. And the reason why I'm so strong about that is you have to create an environment where it's safe, regardless of your form of travel, be it, again, walking, bicycles, scooters. Let's say you choose to use a car or a shared drive, micromobility, buses, subway, whatever is in this particular environment. It all has to be able to be planned and be managed safely. A key element of that is connectivity. All of these different devices need to be able to communicate, to be able to warn each other so that they all know where they are all the time. So this connectivity and the advent of 5G, 6G, 7G, whatever G, is really going to help enable that. And then we also need to think about, there's going to be so much data, a lot of data, and that data is going to be critical to being able to move about efficiently, move about safely, move about in a three-dimensional world. I loved hearing, and I'm sorry, I've forgotten the lady's name from the airport, talking about, the movement of goods and people. We're going to go 3D, not just planes, but drones, other ways to get around. And in a 3D world, you've got to have this communication, you've got to have the protocols. And then on top of that, then you have to have the way to keep that data safe with cybersecurity measures. The other big enabler, and this is one that the Michigan DOT is talking about, and many urban transit agencies are talking about, is we really need a common payment system. So regardless how you want to go from A to B, you need to be able to not have 10 different apps and be able to say, I just want to go to A to B and pay all the different parties, however you choose to go out of that one account. This makes it simple and seamless. You're not going to change people's behavior from having their own car, or what I call, your personal mobility safety net, so to speak. You're not going to change that behavior and reduce congestion unless you make a seamless way to make that happen. And then embroiled in all of this is equity. So, if you think about personal car ownership today, a new car is easily, right now, the average price is almost $42,000. That is unaffordable by the average American. The average American today can afford a car that's 14 years old. It's a shocking statistic, but it's true. So, and that's why our car park keeps getting older and older, more aged in the States. But when we talk about mobility, it really provides access to healthcare, education, jobs, employment. So if we really want to make an equitable society, mobility has to be a part of that. And it can't be considered just, it has to be considered a given. We have to find those solutions utilizing technology that makes mobility affordable for all. So all of these things coming together requires talent much beyond just us geeky engineers. We can do technology, but human behavior, anthropology, legal, law, public policy, all of these things have to come together to create this vision and mobility for tomorrow.
Excellent. Glenn, mobility, multimodal or car-centric?
Well, it's always been multimodal. I mean, going back to the, the dawn of time, as different forms of transportation came about, people move differently and goods move differently. And now it's just the acceleration of technology that is making things so dynamic. I'll give you two cases in point, two game changers, which we've seen. One is the fact that Michigan is actively involved in leading in low Earth orbiting satellites. That is something that with the Michigan Launch Initiative, and again, this is another organization we partnership with, and I just got done speaking at the space conference in Traverse City. And you say space conference, well, yeah, there was 300 people there. And so this is part of Michigan's leadership role too. And the other one is outdoor living. And this is a big shift. We've been seeing a growth in outdoor mobility, transportation, whether it be the camper van, and you know what I'm talking about. This is the big thing right now. But it's electric bikes, it's electric, ATVs and things like that. That growth market is so big. So we're working in the UP. I just got off a big call this morning with the MEDC about a project in the UP where we can lead in the outdoor mobility segment. So I think really what it boils down to is us in Michigan collaborating, all the people on this call, making sure that we're continuing to lead. And what really got our attention was in 2014 when the headline of the Wall Street Journal was "The Future of the Cars in Silicon Valley." That's quote unquote, that's what it said. And I can tell you that that became very much a rallying cry for a lot of us, and we have not rested since then. We've been working this plan. So it's multimodal, it is diverse, it is changing with the world. And look, we've been doing this for 120 years. And if we want to do it for another 120 years, it's about being in the right places, making the right things, and having the people with the right talent to drive the industry for the future.
It's interesting. I'm sure you're aware of Tony Bernacci, the Aerospace Association.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
It occurs to me that you got to be multimodal because some of these different modes of transportation are actually going to be sharing space. It's
literally.
It's going to be a little crazy. That's right. All right, next question. And Glenn, we're going to start with you. Funding the future of mobility. I mean, where do we look for that? Because it was easy enough when it was cars or buses. You sold the bus, you made money, you built more buses, cars, etc. This is a little different look when we look at all of this stuff, networking.
When you talk about funding, you're talking about where does the development come from and where is the infrastructure. This is all going to be public-private partnership. Yep. This is not an either or. This is how do we marshal the resources of both the government, the private sector, and in the case of talent, education. And it's a trifecta. Charlie Ackerman, who's the VP of HR from Bosch for North America, he talks about that trifecta all the time. Every time I'm with him with a whiteboard, he goes and draws those three circles, how they have to work together. And I'll give you a case study in point about how this is working right now. If you know a little bit about the CAVNU project, which is between Detroit and Ann Arbor, this is about as futuristic and realistic, aggressive plan to bring automated vehicles, connected vehicles, and electrified vehicles in a corridor between Ann Arbor and Detroit. That project is underway, and it's being funded both by private and by public because it's being funded by pensions and things like that, pension funds and things like that. So I think it's going to be both, and it has to be both, and it has to be everybody at the table pulling in the same direction, particularly here in our state.
Yeah. Carla, anything to add to that?
Yeah, I just couldn't agree more. Public-private partnerships are the way to go. We've spent too much time, I think, as a society telling government they need to take care of this, and then looking at industry, and saying you need to take care of it. And you can't do it alone. It requires the expertise of all sides, and it requires more than just even, those big entities that I just mentioned. It requires the local municipalities where these roadways go through, the local businesses, because this influences the entire economics of the region. So everybody has to be involved. You get their buy-in, you listen to them, and you create and learn from these, various projects like Cavenue. I mean, Cavenue is a great place. It's what I want to call an engineer's playground, but we have to do it, again, keeping in mind what our mobility needs are, how we want to keep everyone safe, so that we can address all of the issues that need to be addressed when it comes to mobility in the state, and learn from that, and then expand. You do things in small bits, try it, make an experiment, learn, and then start to expand it and grow it out.
So, so the next question deals with a little bit of history, but where we are now mostly. I mean, there was a time when you could say the automotive industry, trucks and cars, made us famous, put us on the global map, put us in a position of leadership, because we were one of the few suppliers of those vehicles. So let's speak to the mobility industry's economic contribution in Michigan today. Carla, you want to start with that?
Yeah, I mean, it's still a huge part of Michigan's economy. When you look at the number of jobs in the state that are either directly at an OEM supplier or small to mid-sized manufacturer, and then all the ancillary businesses and schools and things that are supported or in some way related, it's a huge part of our economy. And, as we transition more into electrification and look at some of those businesses converting over to being electrified, it's going to continue to be a large part of our economy. I think, we're still the Motor City capital of the world. I don't think Silicon Valley's eaten our lunch yet. Tesla's done quite well. They've disrupted the industry. And I think the industry needed that disruption to show them that, yeah, other people can build cars. We thought nobody else could come in and build them, and darn it all, they've done it. And they're actually taking the EV market by storm right now. So, it's ours to recapture. We still have the capability of, many, many years, and we have the capability to change rapidly if that's the way we determine to go. And right now we're seeing all the OEMs, all the suppliers really putting plans in place and investing the money so that they can make those changes. So it's around out of our economy. And Glenn, you may have the figure at the top of your tongue right now in terms of, the percentage of jobs that are related to the automotive industry, but it's somewhere in my memory between, this is a big gap, 40 to 60%. It may even be more now with some of the startups and new businesses and data analytics that have started here in the state.
Glenn?
Yeah, and Carla framed it perfectly. That narrative about Silicon Valley and other places, that's still true, but we've changed that narrative a lot the last several years. Because when I went to California back in 2015, I did a focus group myself. We created a brochure of all of Michigan's mobility assets, and we went out and we talked to companies. I talked to Apple, Google, Tesla, and a startup called Ativa, which is now called Lucid Motors, which you probably have heard about. And I talked to every one of them over the course of a week. I wanted to know what their perception of Michigan was. And basically, I got a very offhanded compliment that said, two of them used this word: "You guys are great metal benders, but we got the innovation. We'll take care of the brains out here." So I brought that back and informed our group, and we've been able to change that narrative back to where, look, there's no greater concentration of research and development in the world in automotive and tech and mobility than in Michigan, period. And I got the data to prove it. So what does the data say? The data says that the economic contribution of the mobility industry, which includes all of those different things I talked about, from drones to auto, is $304 billion annually. Okay, that's a big number, but we use that number to frame it in what the opportunity is. Because when you look at what Carla talked about, the ACEs, automated, connected, electrified, and shared, we're talking about trillions of dollars of economic opportunity into the future. So we either earn that and grab a huge piece of that, or we let what we have erode. We're not going to let it erode. So it's $304 billion annually. And basically, Carla's right. It's about 40% when you include the direct and indirect jobs that really define what our communities drive on. And the last thing I'll say is that we need to use the auto industry. How many times in the course of your lives, mine included, that you've heard people say, man, we got to diversify away from automotive. And we've heard that for decades. And I wouldn't argue then when we weren't doing anything about it, that wasn't a good idea. But now we should use automotive as a platform for diversification. Because artificial intelligence, machine learning, I see Noel on from Automation Alley, Industry 4.0, that's ours. Why shouldn't we grow different industries out of those different types of core capabilities that we already have?
Yeah, absolutely right. So one too many years ago, I was at the ITS conference when they held it at Cobo Hall. And I remember distinctly interviewing the director of DOD from DC. And we talked about infrastructure. So let's talk about that, because mobility is not just those little vehicles and modes that move around. Is Michigan postured? Are they going to be ready in the future with the infrastructure needed to be effective? Glenn, let's start with you.
Okay, sure. Well, I'll give you a little acronym lesson real quick. Some of you may know these, but when you hear expressions like V to V or V to I or V to X, that's what we mean. V2V means vehicle to vehicle communication. V2I means vehicle to infrastructure communication. V2X means vehicle to everything. And when we are in the Internet of Things, the vehicle really does connect to an incredible amount of things. But back to your question about infrastructure, and I really do believe that MDOT, our MDOT, under Director Steidl's leadership and now Director Ajegba's, is probably as cutting edge as any in the world. They really, really, and now there's a lot of great ones in the world, but they've been at this for some time. If we don't have the right infrastructure in place physically that we can touch and feel, and that does mean the condition of our roads, all the way to what we can't see that's embedded in that infrastructure, all the way to the data management, which means broadband connectivity or satellite connectivity. All of this really doesn't mean a thing unless that's in place, because that's the base level operating system for everything to be enabled around. So I think we're going in the right direction. I do believe this administration, I know Governor Snyder, I do believe they understand that the investment has to be made, or we can't do what we need to do to maintain that leadership position and really grow our economy.
Absolutely. Carla,
Yeah, I just had the great opportunity to interview Governor Whitmer, and one of my questions always is, does fix the damn roads mean make the roads smarter? We don't want to have dumb roads. And the answer always is yes, we're doing this in combination. If you look at some of our corridors, we already have on 69, now we're making the one on 94, and we have other corridors. 23 is a great example where we now have the margin or side lane running during certain times of the day. All of these were started by the Michigan DOT to be able to learn, how communication works. We also put in a lot of DSRC, so we could have that direct vehicle to vehicle communication. Most manufacturers now are looking at what Glenn just described, the V2C, which is going to use cellular data, which means today 4G LTE data has too much latency. There's too long of a time between the signal coming from another vehicle or from the cloud to get to the car that we don't have reliability of data. So when we go to 5G, 6G and beyond, this should be removed. That latency should become a thing of the past. We don't have proof positive of that yet. We need to do more work and experiments, but it should be. And then enabling, putting in 5G technology throughout the state, putting broadband in, especially to the rural areas, is going to become very, very critical. Broadband can be satellite, can be a lot of different things, but we need to find a solution. Again, this is an equity issue about broadband. You know, we really need to have this just so kids can go to school. But beyond that, you know, we need it for the communication protocols. So that is understood, well understood, and we need to think about how to build that strategically. Where is it most important at first that we're able to increase throughput, reduce congestion, improve safety? Where do we have those critical hotspots where traffic is log jammed and or super safety risk, a lot of accidents, a lot of fatalities? And we need to smartly build out that infrastructure. Definitely the legislators understand it. As part of the infrastructure plan, you see broadband being part of that under the Biden administration. You also see the infrastructure for charging stations, which are going to require that same level of connectivity, because people need to know what charging station is where and how they can book it, or how they can make sure that when they get there, it's going to be working and able to charge their vehicle. So it's all part of this infrastructure package, but we have to do it, I would say, in steps and properly, so that, you know, the build out goes along with the consumer demand. The other part is we need to have smart traffic signals and smart street lamps that have a lot of technology in there to, again, it's not just for mobility, but it's for safety. It's for education. There are a number of things that we need to include in our infrastructure, but putting it into the traffic signals is really quite critical to be able, again, to prevent those accidents, to be able to allow efficiencies so that people can accelerate and decelerate properly, or an autonomous vehicle can do that, and look at the energy savings that can provide too. Because at the end of the day, you want this to be not just a more efficient way to get around, but you also want it to be a lower carbon footprint way.
Carla, you have laid out perfectly a segue to the next question, because both of you have talked about who all has to be involved. Our state government, academia, R&D, and private industry, are they all working together for this future total mobility program?
They're starting to more than ever. I think there's been some shocking statistics that I'm sorry, you didn't say for me to go first.
Oh, go
Yes,
ahead,
you go
Carla.
first, Carla.
Go.
I'm so sorry. I just started going. There's shocking statistics right now that shows how little we've put into research as a country in the last, I would say, 10, 15 years. And as a result, we're losing a lot of our talent to those countries that are putting money into research. That, of course, is changing again with the latest executive order, with a large amount of research coming back. That research needs to be basic and applied. Basic meaning we need to solve the problems related to energy transfer and better efficiencies of batteries and propulsion, but it also needs to be applied so that we're actually able to put these things into practice within industry very quickly. One of the biggest roadblocks in the past has been, if you worked with a university, it could be years and years and years before you got anything you could use, and that's not helpful. So, and it's partly because of the way academia is structured, and everyone's trying to get, you know, a certain amount of publications to get their PhD. But there's a lot of people in academia now who are really interested in doing applied research, and a number of positions that exist now that make that happen. So it has to be all three. It has to be the triple helix of government, industry, and academia working together to really create the IP to propel us to the leadership in all the different technologies that are needed. And that includes electrification, it includes fuel cells, it includes AI, it includes virtual reality, you know, machine learning. All of this needs to have the human capital, and we need to get our educational systems aligned with what industry needs.
Glenn, anything you want to add to that?
Yeah, I mean, I would echo what Carla says, and I would say that the answer to your question is yes and no. I think, and for me, the tipping point was really evident was the grand bargain. And people say, well, that was to save Detroit. And well, it wouldn't have happened unless there had been a collaborative group of business entities, economic development entities, and politicians from across the state, from every corner, that made that happen. And, you know, ever since then, I just didn't see the silos that I saw, you know, even growing up. I grew up in the UP, so a little bit detached, but, you know, things happen when people work together on things. I mean, that's so cliche to say, but it's true. I do believe that economic development and education and industry are working together to advance the mobility initiative and the mobility agenda here in Michigan. We do need our legislators, both at a federal and a state level, to be more collaborative. And, you know, there's the 10 million people in Michigan depend on our political leaders to be on the same page. I mean, we all know on this call right now, we have transformative amounts of money available to us right now that can set us up for the future, or, you know, set us the same way. And I believe we're gonna be set up for the future, but it's all gonna be if we're all working together.
All right, so let's go to another issue now, Glenn, and we'll start with you. The biggest problem facing business, period, is talent, shortage of talent. Are we going to have the pipeline of talent to be the human infrastructure for our growth in mobility?
We have to. That's not a, you know, are we? That, Chris, we have to. I mean, everything is dependent on that, everything. So right now we have some big demographics working against us. And I'll give you 4 stats. Carolyn, I see Carolyn from our team, she hears me talk about this all the time. We have a declining birth rate every year in Michigan right now, okay? We have a declining high school graduation every year projected through 2029, okay? We have a maturing workforce in Michigan. So 1/3 of our manufacturing workforce, this auto mobility industry, is 55 years or older and aging very rapidly. And the last one is we are not a net migration state. We're low to late 40s in the top 50 states for net migration. So when you add all that up together, that is not, those are not good base underlying, but we know this, right? And I've heard the governor's administration talk about these things too. The bottom line is we have to get the workforce more enabled than it is, and we have to get it participating more than it is. People talk about all the problems we have with labor right now, and I remind people we were sub 4.0 unemployment in February of 2020 before the pandemic. This is not a new issue. It's been multiplied and highlighted in many different areas because of it. But our growth, whether it's on the factory floor or it's an advanced design and engineering of the most innovative mobility technology, that will only be enabled if we have the right skills. And I really feel, and this is what a lot of our work is that we need to grow our own, develop our own, and keep our own. That's our best chance for success.
Excellent stuff. Carla, anything?
Yeah, and I agree completely with what Glenn said. And the best way to retain is, again, to have that research being done here to provide the opportunities for the startups, for the incubators, for innovation to thrive. Unfortunately, and this is something we have to get rid of, the automotive industry is seen as stodgy and difficult to be innovative. And we have to kill that perception. And the way to do that is get out in the classrooms, start talking to students, get into the high schools, get into the colleges, and talk about how great the industry is and some of the cool things that we're doing. Show that innovation, showcase it, do innovation workshops. Just be out there talking about really how high tech the vehicle is. And Tesla says it perfectly. We're not an automotive company. We're a technology company. That gets people wanting to work there immediately, but they're building cars just like everybody else. Now it is a very complex, electric vehicle, but nonetheless, it's a different terminology and different vernacular. And we have to get out and talk about it in such a way, and really attract and drive talent. The other is, with the pandemic, we now have the opportunity that people can work from anywhere fundamentally, depending on their job. And I think we need to tackle that too. You don't have to live, in the urban areas. You can live in other places of Michigan as well and look at what Michigan has to offer. And we really need to put that whole package together for folks. We have a great cost of living, a great environment, even in the urban areas. I think it's great, but I'm a lifer here. But yeah, it requires that kind of discussion. And we have to show as an industry, we praise innovation, we praise failure. It's fine. And we're going to make these new ideas happen.
Excellent. So, so let me ask you on a personal note, I'm very worried about this. Will the autonomous vehicle be here in time for me to be able to go to the grocery store in my declining years?
It depends where you live, Chris. If you live in the villages in Florida, in a closed environment, closed loop community system, the answer is absolutely yes, because that's already here. Airports are another example, but last mile, which it's called primary, and it's beyond last mile now. Yes, that's already happening. That's going to happen. Now, the point where we're going to have autonomous vehicles, zipping all over the world, just like we have internal combustion engines, and we'll have electric, more and more electric. That's a little bit further out, but I don't underestimate where technology is going.
Okay. Carla?
Yeah, I
anything?
agree 100%. Geofenced areas exist now, and they're just going to keep being expanded where only autonomous vehicles are allowed. They'll just keep getting bigger and bigger as we learn more and more and people get more used to them. And eventually you'll only be able to drive your car like you can ride a horse today.
Excellent stuff. Okay, so you used a couple of buzzwords in there, V2V. Yeah, well, one of these we're getting now into audience participation here. One of these geeked one of the people on the call. Buzzwords like V2V, V2I. He felt they kind of came from the past and wondered where those technologies, how they were advancing today.
Well, the one thing about our industry and a lot of industries is we got a lot of buzzwords, a lot of acronyms, a lot of abbreviations, and they're all here and now. They have been for some time, but things are advancing so rapidly right now. There'll be new terminology and there'll be new technology that we're not even aware of very soon, within months, certainly years. If you just look at electrification, the batteries in the vehicles today, and I wanted to make sure I didn't ignore an Ekit's question about recycling, which, by the way, is not something that's at the forefront of thought right now with designability of vehicles, but it's becoming more and more. And Carla knows more about this than I do. But I think that what we're going to see with advancements is going to, and it's been like this for several years now. I mean, Moore's law was put into place a long time ago, and it kept being proven out and proven out and proven out. And now you can apply Moore's law to a lot of things. And I think you'll see this in electrification, where you'll see the acceleration of technology and the cost for that technology to be accessible to people advance pretty dramatically.
Yeah, and to just talk a little bit about V2V, V2C, V2X, you may think that's old terminology, and you may be thinking about, at one point there was legislature to make all vehicles communicable by 2021, which never made it through. And a lot of companies have kind of slowed down their development of that, again, for economics and also because the infrastructure isn't there yet. We're back to that chicken and egg issue. But nonetheless, it's very real. And most of the companies, as we head into autonomy, really believe that that element of communication to the cloud, communication to other vehicles is very critical to enable that level 4, level 5 being. So part of the problem with that is, when we have a car park that's almost 13 years old today, are we going to require all those old vehicles on the roadway to be communicable as well? Because if you're in a mixed situation of computer managed vehicles and human driven vehicles, the human brain is a crazy thing, and you cannot test for that number of parameters that you could possibly encounter by an autonomous vehicle. So it creates a very difficult paradigm when you get into this mixed mode traffic. So communication is critical. Communication in a geofenced area is really, really critical to enable efficiencies and safety. And you'll continue to hear about V2V, V2X, but I think it just kind of started to simmer. However, the OEMs are getting a ton of data off every new car they sell. It's going to the cloud. You sign up to it, you agree to it. Most of you do it very easily when you buy the vehicle. Lots of data is being gathered today. So V2V or V2C is happening probably more than you even know.
So here might be another term considered a blast from the past. Give us an update. Carla, we'll start with you. Fuel cell technology.
Yeah, we always kind of joke about that. Fuel cells is always 10 years away. And when 10 years go by, it's another 10 years away. But we're actually starting to see some inroads happening. Great announcements the last few days by Toyota, by Hyundai, about huge investments. The reason is, as we look at electrification and or reducing the carbon footprint of our big commercial vehicles, there's really not a better way to do that than with fuel cells. The amount of batteries that it requires and the amount of downtime to charge those vehicles, most drayage companies are going to suffer immensely because there's not a lot of profit margin anyway. Any minute that vehicle's not moving is just dollars rolling off the back of that product. Fuel cells have the ability to really go the long range, to be able to manage the big heavy vehicles and to do that very efficiently. We still have to get the chemistry right, but all the money that's being poured into, researching that is going to really help to make it happen quicker. If you look at the LA port, Toyota's already got fuel cell vehicles running there. And the hydrogen infrastructure exists in California. It doesn't exist anywhere yet. And that's another huge piece of the puzzle. But with the amount of money being poured in, we're going to start seeing some leapfrogging. And just to give you a little bit of geekydom, a lot of the chemical reaction that happens in a battery is almost same as what happens in a fuel cell. So as we get batteries more efficient, we'll be able to translate that over to fuel cells and be able to improve that chemistry and be able to reduce the precious materials, the precious metals, which really drive up the cost exponentially.
Right. Glenn, anything to add?
Well, I would just add that you have to always look at what's driving this, okay? And there are a variety of factors, but the bottom line is that governments, particularly in the EU, China, and even Canada, are mandating that this has to happen. Okay, this is not, so it's not a question of if this is going to happen, it's what's the curve going to be? Is it going to be more electric? Is it going to be hydrogen? Is it going to be something we're not even talking about right now? But it's going to happen. The second reason is, and you can debate this or not, but climate and environment are driving this too. Okay, that's another thing. The third thing is, what do consumers want, right? Now, a Tesla consumer is very different than the consumer that you and I, or most of us, would be right now, but there's a reason why that company has grown. And there is a reason why the other companies are looking at it. There's a reason why Apple's going to put a car together. I'm convinced they're going to put one together. And it's just an extension of Apple.
Yeah.
And so it's all about the marketing channel. And it's no different that in the car business too. So yes, this is happening. And yes, we're going to see fuel cells and we're going to see different types of fuel and propulsion systems continue to evolve.
It's interesting. I'm just back yesterday from a week in the White Mountains, and my son, who drives a hybrid and all electric, had an app that showed him where the next charging station was. And that's some infrastructure work, of course, we have yet to do too.
Yeah, Chris, I don't know if I mentioned this. Ford was good enough to give me a Mustang Mach-E for a couple of weeks. And I just drove it. I just got back a week ago with it, and I had cars conference to go to. So I said, I'm going to be a consumer. I want to experience the technology that Ford's putting up, but I want to test the infrastructure out for charging. And I want to see what I think about this thing. It was a really eye-opening experience. And the people I met, along the way, whether at charging stations or people who were curious about the vehicle. And the most positive thing that happened was the amount of young people who wanted to know about the car.
Yep.
They were like, is that all electric? Is that really that huge iPad on your dashboard? What does that do? And I was just like going, yes, this is what we need. We need them to be understanding that this technology is so cool and that they can work in it. So yeah, I think that, things are going to advance very quickly, but it's cool that it's happening here.
I also want to point out the definition of young person, okay? Because it's been changing for me lately. Carla, do you have anything to add to that?
No, I fully agree with what Glenn's saying. And the Gen Z kids that grew up, watching the polar bears float on ice in the middle of the ocean are the ones who are going to really take electrification to heart. And those are probably close to the age group Glenn's talking about. And also the other part of that, we're talking a little bit about Apple and Apple Car. They understand consumer experience, they understand interface, they understand what makes you happy. And in the future, and one thing we have to think about as the automotive industry is it's not going to be about ride and handling or any of those elements we typically advertise and are our brand identity. It's going to all be about the customer experience. How happy do we make them? How seamless do we integrate into their life? Can my grocery list show up on the dash? Can it tell me where these things are on sale so I don't even have to look? All of these things, it's data and data management and data analytics, and that's what's going to rule. So, we need to be thinking about that. And that's what's going to make our industry so darn cool and able to attract, these Gen Zers, or even hopefully not that young, in droves. And we have to be thinking about that and position ourselves properly.
So another from the crowd here, how does the migration from gas to electric powered vehicles change the research and development, manufacturing process, in as much as its geographic location, the type of jobs, pays, benefits, and the local economic development impact? Anybody
Wow,
want to tackle
that's a 3-hour seminar right
Easy.
there.
This is from next week's speaker, by the way.
Yeah, I'll tell you, that's the thing I think about the most is what's the transformation look like is one thing, but it's what does it mean for Michigan? Okay, and all you have to do is, and I've done this recently, is you have to put an F-150 as we know it today next to an F-150 Lightning and pop the trunk. Well, one is, or the front, they call it now, the front trunk. Pop the hood. There's nothing under the hood of an F-150 Lightning. So what does that mean? That means less parts. That means less suppliers. That means less jobs. So, and a lot of companies in Michigan supply the internal combustion engine. So what does that mean for us and how are we transforming for it? And that's the stuff that, that we think about all the time. And there is going to be a transition, and it's not going to be like this. Okay. It's not a hockey stick but it is going to happen. And it's going to be something that if we evolve with it, or we stay ahead of that inflection point and take the upward trajectory. And, in Michigan, we've been the victim of a lot of impacts that we weren't ready for, or we didn't have a plan for. I feel pretty good about where we're at going forward.
Glenn, the UP metaphor of a hockey stick was not lost on me. I want you to know that. Carla, anything to add on that?
I think he addressed that pretty well. I mean, yeah, it's a huge issue, and this is what makes the drive to electrification so important to be timed well. There are many different tentacles of the electrification octopus, and we have to make sure that, is our workforce ready? Do we have our supply chain ready? Do we have the raw materials that we need, to create these batteries? Do we have the recycling and end of life ready? If we don't think about that and that transition very seriously, and the timing of that, and the workforce training, et cetera, we're going to end up with unintended consequences that as a nation we won't like. So the timing is critical to make sure we have each one of those tentacles managed And we need to be continually talking and making sure that we're covering all that risk mitigation, and we're future proofing ourselves.
Yeah, that's a
Again,
good way
the
to
right
put it,
way.
Carla. That's a really good, I mean, just all you have to do is look at what's going on with microchips right now.
Okay, I wish I had an explanation for what took place there, but I do not. Can anyone hear me?
Yep, we hear you, Chris. It
Okay,
Yeah, I
happened.
can hear you, Chris.
all right, thank you. Yeah, I have no idea what happened, and the host truly did not end the meeting.
No.
But I'll tell you what, because we are at 12:56, we were about to close it out anyway.
No, I think, hey, Chris, I think you guys did a great job. It was an enlightening discussion. And
Oh,
thanks also to Carla and Glenn as well.
well, thank you. I appreciate that. Noel. That's-
Yeah, absolutely.
no,
Well,
that's
great seeing you again, Chris.
Good
Thank you
seeing
again for
you.
inviting me. All right,
Thank
take
you.
care.
Thanks for being
Bye-bye.
on.
Bye,
Appreciate it.
Ben. Bye, Rhonda.
All right, see you guys. See everyone.
See
Thanks,
ya.
Chris.
Yeah, well, we may as well not do the normal sign off. I thank the sponsors, but it can't be overstated how important to these events the sponsors are. And by thanking the Capital Region International Airport, Fly Lansing, Dean Transportation, certainly Shaheen Chevrolet Cadillac, Sinair Corporation, LAFQ, the MSU International Business Center, Tristar Trust Bank, and LEAP, the Lansing Economic Area Partnership. Our next event, we're thinking we'll go live with it,
Okay,
is going to be November 3rd. Stacy Slobodnik-Stoll, head coach of Michigan State's women's. We're going to hear about how a program that lethal gets started in a state that's under snow 5 months a year.
there you go.
Just been incredible stuff. So with that, thanks for hanging with us. I apologize. We'll get a hold of our speakers and apologize. And there were 2 questions left, I think, and we'll try to get those answered.
No problem. It was a good event, Chris, but I'm not going to continue the rest of my day unless you tell me to have a prosperous one. So
Well, I was going to sign off that way, actually, before I let you go.
then just for me, do it. Yeah.
Yeah, Ben, you have a prosperous day, my friend.
You too, my friend. Good to see you,
Rhonda,
buddy.
you too. All right.
Thank you.
All right.
Bye, everyone.
Good to see you guys.
Hey, Carla, can you hear me?
Yes.
I was like, oh no, is it something I said?
I didn't know what happened either.
Sometimes if you program it a certain time,
Yep. It just ends.
it just ends.
Hey, guys.
Hey.
That's okay, no big deal.
That
No,
was
no problem.
that was quite an ending you guys put on there. How'd you do that?
Like,
Yeah, pretty cool, huh? We just shut up and everybody could go away.
We had a few people circle back and come in, and we don't know what happened. It said the host ended the meeting.
Right.
We had 3 minutes left.
yeah, no problem. It was great. Thank you for the opportunity.
Yes,
Yeah,
thank you
know
so
what else?
much.
We're getting calls in right now that say how good it was. And you got to remember that how wider the audience is than what you saw here, because it's on so many different platforms, you know?
Yeah, no, I enjoyed it. I mean, Carlin, well, I think she knows this, but I'm a big fan of her and the work they do. And what you don't know, Chris, and most people don't know, is that on March 23rd of last year, Carla and I and a bunch of other people started talking. Every week we had a call, and that call still exists today. But we all got together to get ourselves together as an industry through the pandemic. And let me tell you what, I would have brought that up, but talk about people who are all on the same page. Debbie Dickel's on the call, Haley Stevens is on the call,
Tom Kelly.
Everybody's on the call, and Carla's on there. Carla's been religious about it.
That is awesome. And you know, you said it earlier when everybody gets on board, how much quicker things get done. That's how Michigan Celebrates ever started. I was chair of SBAM and I called in SBA and SBDC and all these other organizations. I said, we all have the same mission to help small business and none of us talk. You know, and so we started doing these things together. And I'm glad we're being kind of forced in that direction.
I gotta run. I have another
Yeah, good to see everybody.
conference to get into.
I appreciate it.
Bye,
Take
Carla.
care.
Bye, Chris.
My pleasure.
All right.
Thanks,
We'll
Chris.
see you
Bye.
folks soon. All right.